back to the channel. In the last video, I bought a super cheap Repo Nissan 370Z from the auction. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem like the previous owner did very much maintenance to the car, because when I got the car from the auction, it had a rod knock. I ended up putting a good used engine in the car and everything runs perfectly fine. But unfortunately, I put an OS Giken twin disc clutch in there. And if you've ever driven a car with an OS Giken twin or triple disc clutch, you know depressing the clutch is very harsh. And unfortunately, it has a Z1 Motorsports version 1 internal to external slave conversion, which for the life of me, I cannot get it to press the clutch in enough to release or even start the car. So what I'm going to do today is I've been wanting to try Uniclutch's new track clutch, and I'm going to be pulling the OS Giken twin disc clutch out and replacing it with a Uniclutch twin disc clutch. And the great thing about Uniclutch's new technology clutch is they keep everything in OE spec, so you don't have to shim your throwout bearing or do anything crazy like you do with the OS Giken twins and triples, or any of that other stuff. You use a factory throwout bearing, everything goes together really smoothly. And the great thing about their clutch is it's a modular design. So if you want to adapt it to a flex plate and you want to have, you know, some crazy swap like the VK56 guys, that where you don't have the trigger wheel on a flywheel, you can actually adapt these clutches to the flex plate and then have a clutch and have your flex plate trigger wheel and not have to do a bunch of crazy stuff like that. So it gives people a lot better opportunity for doing crazy swaps or doing stuff where there never was a flywheel in the first place, and then being able to run a good clutch in the car and not having any of those crazy kind of fabrication issues that you would have with having to custom design a flywheel, which means you have to figure out the ring gear and get the ring gear and all that stuff to work with that engine and that swap. So let's get this unboxed. So if you've never heard of Uniclutch, it's an Australian company. They're coming to the US. I think they actually sell all these clutches at Napa. You can order them through Napa, but they're really nicely packaged. And that's just kind of the cherry on top. This is like the box, but then you open it and you get this nice little pouch. I don't know what I'm going to use this for after I pull the clutch out of it, but let me pull it out of this box and then I could open it up. All right, so now you have the little pouch. It unzips. It's just like that extra cherry on top of packaging. The clutch is in there secure. You're not going to have to worry about getting a damaged clutch. And these things are super nice. So I got the track version for the 370Z because I plan on taking it to the road course, plan on driving it on the street a little bit. But the great thing about these is they have a really nice engagement, a really nice feel. Also, they're already torqued down. You don't have to do anything. When these things are done and they start slipping, you know, all clutches are going to eventually go out, but you just replace it as a whole unit. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, in OS Giken, you can go and get plates and rebuild them. By the time you rebuild a clutch, you almost have as much money in that clutch as you would just buying a brand new one, especially how affordable these are and how much torque and power. And the great thing is all of these clutches are relatively the same. The great idea that Uniclutch had is they have this little splined key in here. And let me move this and we'll go into the installation kit below it. The other box is the installation kit. We're just gonna get this out of here. And what this has in it is it has a ring that goes on your flywheel or your flex plate, and then that clutch bolts to this. So this has a bunch of different letters on it. In the instructions, it tells you which one you need to do or use to mount it to your flywheel. And then in the center right here is all your different splines. So the kits come with all the splines that you're gonna need for what, actually more than what you're gonna need. So, you know, if I wanted to, I think this is probably a GM spline. It looks kind of like it. Well, one of these are. Looks like a GM spline, but it'll tell you which one you need to use. It has spacers. In those spacers, it'll tell you which one you need to use. And it has all the hardware in here to get the clutch installed. So you're not going to have to be going out trying to find different things. Also, they sell these at Napa. So if you don't have something, or if maybe something comes missing in a kit, which is very unlikely, you can go down to Napa and resolve the issue really quick. Another thing is how these are made. So like I said, it splines in. So this just drops in, and then you can adapt this to a bunch of different transmissions. So let's say I want to put a CD09 behind a GM, or I wanted to put a, JK400 behind a, an LS or something like that. It's possible. It's just this whole thing makes swaps in everything possible. So let's get the transmission out of the Z, get this external slave conversion out of here. This thing is garbage. I got the updated version. I'm hoping it's going to work. It turns it into pretty much the older CDO1. So hopefully that resolves that issue. And yeah, hopefully we don't have to do too much. I ended up putting all the bolts in because I didn't think I was going to have to pull it back out. But yeah, let's get her out of the car. Right, so we have a pretty big issue. I'm not exactly sure how this happened, but the pivot ball completely sheared off. I don't know if maybe it didn't have enough threads in there, and when I was trying to depress the clutch, it just literally ripped it out. You can see how there's still aluminum on there. I have no clue, but what I had to do is I ordered the updated billet aluminum cover, and hopefully it'll be here in the next few days. I was hoping to get this done today, but we'll wait for this piece, and hopefully everything goes okay, and I can have it back in the car. And little problems like this is why projects always take a little bit longer than you expect. Now that I have the OS Giken out of the 370Z, it's just kind of strange that the pivot ball was ripped out of the transmission case, because that's a factory replacement CDO1 piece, and I've never had that issue before on CDO1s. So it kind of looked like the pivot ball didn't have enough thread engagement because there was quite a thick kind of spacer washer on the pivot ball. So it could have ripped the threads out and then got caulked and then broke that piece off. OS Gikens are a very harsh clutch. They require a lot of pedal feel. And if there's any weak points in your clutch system, an OS Giken twin or triple disc is going to find it. There's no doubt at that. So why I wanted to upgrade to the Uniclutch is because they are more of a factory pedal feel, but it's still a twin disc clutch. And it also operates a lot smoother and less chatter than an OS Giken. If you've ever driven a car with an OS Giken, I love OS Giken clutches, but I want to try out a Uniclutch, and it seems like they're coming into a lot better technology. So let's get the Uniclutch installed. I'll shelf this OS Giken for later use, maybe in some other project, and then we'll figure out what was actually going on with it maybe later on down the road. Now, first things first, I need to put the original, it's not the original dual mass flywheel. It's actually an upgraded single mass flywheel, which is awesome. But the flywheel that came originally out of the car when I got it, I had it surfaced because I was going to end up selling it. But now I'm glad I didn't sell it because I need it. We'll put this in the car. I don't think you really need to surface them because the Uniclutch is actually just bolting to this outside ring, and then it's not actually using the flywheel face. So let's get this back in the car, and then we can put the adapter ring on, the spacers, the Uniclutch, and get it ready to put the transmission back in the car. You just open it, and it has, it has all kinds of air fresheners and stickers inside of it. Look at that. Check that out. Oh man, you get different colors. Ooh, yeah, that's nice. In the fitment kit, there is a QR code that you just need to scan, and that will give you all of the instructions that you need to install the Uniclutch onto your specific application. Gives you all of the information about your clutch. You just have to come down here, start now. And I'm going to type in 370Z. It pops up right there. Before you go and install the clutch, you want to verify that all of these Allens are torqued to 15 foot-pounds. Just to make sure that nothing came loose in shipping. They should be perfectly fine. All of these were perfectly fine. You could do it on the car, you could do it off the car. Just make sure you verify, just in case anything, you know, it's coming from Australia, it's a long trip, it's a lot of vibration. Shouldn't have any issues, just verify it. You want to insert the correct key for your transmission, and these go in really easily. So this side goes down, and you just are going to stick it in.
That's what she said.
There's a provided snap ring, and every snap ring has a downside. So as you look right here, there's more of a flat side and there's more of kind of a finished side. This side goes up. A lot of people don't put these in correctly, but we just need to get some internal snap ring pliers. You're just going to go like this, drop it down in here, and it should just clip right in like so. Now I have the key installed and the snap ring, so the clutch is ready to bolt to the flywheel with the adapter, and it recommends that you use the 1mm spacer. So now you need to flip the clutch over. This ring is going to go like this and sit right down in here, but before you do that, you need to have these spacers in here. So these are the 1mm spacers, the smallest one that is in the kit. And I always put the flat side against this surface. Whatever side the bolt's going through, you put the flat side on, because there's a flat side and there's a round side to every washer. So we're just going to set all those in here. Before you put the ring on, there's the letter side, which is going to face you when you put the clutch on, and you can tell because the holes are countersunk. So you're just going to set this down in here nice and slow so you don't lose any of the washers or spacers, and then all the hardware is just going to go in. Countersunk bolts are torqued to 22 foot-pounds. That your adapter ring is properly torqued, there's a bunch of letters throughout this ring, and each letter corresponds to the dowel pins on your flywheel. So you're going to put these on the flywheel, and that's what centers the clutch. So that's why you don't need to align the clutch like you normally would when you're doing a normal clutch assembly, because what you're doing when you align a clutch with the alignment tool is you're aligning the disc to the pressure plate. But since this pressure plate assembly is already 100% done and ready to go, you don't have to do that, which is awesome. So it's one less step, makes it a lot easier, makes it a lot quicker, which also means the transmission should slide in perfect, because this is its own separate splined key. What you need to find on the adapter is the G dowel pin hole, and I just need to come in here, set that G dowel pin in there, and then line the whole clutch up with all the dowel pins. Blue thread locker on the pressure plate bolts, and then they get torqued down to OEM spec, which is 29 foot-pounds. Now that I have the clutch installed, I need to replace this cover right here. And the reason being, I showed you guys before, the pivot ball actually broke out. And as you can see with the missing threads, it didn't have enough threads engaged with the Z1 spacer. So I'm guessing what happened was it tried to rip the threads out, and then it just kind of cocked itself and then broke this out. So I did end up getting their updated version that has a billet cover. The only reason I did that was because I didn't have a stock cover, and I already ordered the upgrade kit because I thought I was going to be able to reuse this cover and this plate right here. So I ended up ordering the kit to upgrade it from the V1 to the V2, which then uses an old CDO1 slave cylinder. It's all new parts. But then after I took the trans out and I saw that this was broke, I ordered the billet cover. So if I would have known originally that the billet cover or this cover was broken, I would have just got a factory CDO9 or JK400 front cover and went to the upgraded internal slave. This is kind of a controversy because if the slave does end up leaking, then it's going to contaminate your clutch. Also, another issue with an internal slave, a lot of people don't talk about it, is as the clutch is being pressed in and out and the slave cylinder is moving on the hydraulic cylinder back and forth, it's actually picking up some of the clutch dust particulate, and that's why cars that have internal slaves, their clutch fluid tends to get dirty probably 75% faster than one that has an external slave. So let's get this cover unbolted, replaced. There's still fluid in it. Hopefully I have it at a good enough angle so the fluid isn't going to leak out, and we'll get everything fixed on this. Should be angled enough. The pivot ball that you're going to use is going to be the smaller one. You're supposed to get 2 pivot balls in the kit, but for some reason my kit only came with 1. So there's another pivot ball if you're going to use an OS Giken clutch, and then you have different shims. So this is a 5mm shim, and all you do is put that on there. The original version 1 kit had all these weird spacers, and I think that's actually why it ripped out. As you can see, there is the correct amount of engagement on this one with the 5mm shim, and we're going to put some thread locker on there. And this is supposed to be torqued to 24 foot-pounds. I'm just going to torque it to 25, and we're just going to thread this in, and it should solve all of our issues. The easiest way to get these retaining clips in for the pivot ball in your clutch fork is you get one side in and started like so, and then you come in and you go like that, and now she's ready to go, as you can see. So everything is nice and tucked in. Another thing you want to do is you want to put some grease in this hole. So I usually use just some high temp. Is you want to throw some grease where the pivot ball is going to sit. And you just need a little bit, just like half a squirt. My friend Brecky, since my press isn't working right now, he pressed on the throwout bearing. Also want to put a little bit of grease on this shaft right here. And you don't need a lot, probably like 2, maybe 1.5 squirts. And then you're going to rub it on there just so it's not metal on metal rubbing back and forth, so it has a nice surface to glide on. And Uniclutch has their own grease that they want you to put them on the splines. Usually I've never put anything on the splines, but since it's kind of a different setup than a normal clutch, I would just go and follow their instructions. There's this little clip right here. This is actually going to, these ears sit right there in the fork, but it needs a clip around this and hold the fork in. So you're going to want to put some grease on these pedestals right here, because the fork is actually going to ride in there like so. Maybe not even a full squirt, maybe a little tiny dab. I'd say just kind of spread it out like so, so it has some on there. This clip slides in like so. And then what I'm going to need to do is I need to get the fork under there, and you can see it's pretty thick. So what I like to do of the throwout bearing, we're just going to slide this in here like so. Now that I have the throwout bearing in there, I need to put the clutch fork, and you're just going to slide it in this way. You're going to pull this out, and you need to seat that spring on the little notches. So the best way to do that is to turn this like so, pull it out, and then come up, do one side at a time. And now we're clipped in. Come back like so. And now we're on the pivot ball, and there's grease already on there. And you can see that it actuates nice and it's not binding or anything. Uniclutch gives you a little packet of grease for the splines of the shaft. I think you're supposed to use the factory hardware. I don't know. I'll put it on here for now, but I'll probably end up taking this back off. All I have left to do is I'm going to raise the rear coils another probably inch because it's still sitting a little bit too low. And then I'm not sure what I'm going to do about wheels and tires. So for now, as you can see, we have a lot of camber. It's barely worn. I'd say maybe a little bit over 25% of the tire. So this is half right here. So I'm going to do the good old drift mod and flip the tires. the Z, she's doing pretty good. I mean, I was surprised at the gas mileage. It says the range on this is like 450 miles on a full tank. Man, I'm gonna be driving everywhere in this thing. I need to go look at a set of wheels though first. Cruising the Z around all day, and this is almost like heaven. I love this car. For the price that I got for, I mean, I still have a lot to do to it, but it's just so much fun. The Uniclutch drives, you know, 1,400 foot-pounds of torque. It supposedly will hold, and it drives like a factory clutch. Just no hesitation at all. Just so much fun to drive this thing around. I was having a great time driving the Z home from the junkyard. I get about 3 or 4 miles into the trip. The trip isn't that long, and I started to smell coolant. The temp gauge was around 190, 200, so it didn't overheat. But I think what's going on is the block is actually cracked. And once it built pressure up, it just started to leak out of the crack or whatever is going on. It looks like it's coming from behind the AC compressor or in the AC compressor area. It's not a head gasket issue. It's not a water pump issue. We have coolant in the reservoir, there's coolant in the radiator, and there's coolant in here. So the one thing I'm just assuming is that we have a cracked block. Totally sucks because it was so much fun driving this home from the junkyard. And this is why I buy my own cars from the auction that are like low mile, hitting the rear. This engine came out of a car that they hit like a barrier, but it just ripped all the passenger side suspension off of. And unfortunately, you know, he said that the motor mounts or the engine mounts were broken. When I bought the engine, it didn't look like there was any damage when I put the engine together, but it's hard to see these little micro cracks that happen. And it, you know, it's leaking a lot of coolant. So I think by tomorrow, all the coolant will be pretty much out of it because it's going to leak out of it. It's definitely coming from the block area. So yeah, it just really sucks because now I have to start off at square one and find another engine. Probably what I'm going to end up doing is just finding a car. So I can just pull a low mile engine out of a car. Then I'll get the front and the rear bumpers and we'll just kind of work from there. I found a set of wheels for the car, but now I don't know if I'm going to buy them because it might take a few months to, I was planning on dailying this thing, and now it's probably going to be a few months until I get the whole situation resolved because I need to install lifts into the new shop. I'm going to install 3 lifts and then probably a bunch of 4 posts. So I need to get those set up and a bunch of other stuff set up before I can even mess with this thing. So unfortunately, it sucks that this happened, but the Uniclutch, that clutch, if you have not tried one yet, I would definitely recommend throwing one in a car, especially for the price point. They just make sense to throw in a car. And once you do, it's probably the only clutch you're going to ever use. I think a lot of people are sleeping on Uniclutch right now because they're new to the market. Not a lot of people know about them. You know, I think Uniclutch is far superior than ACT, McLeod, all of those big name brands. And plus you can do a bunch of different stuff with them and use them on a bunch of different swaps instead of having to go and find a flywheel, make a flywheel and do all this extra stuff. You can just bolt the clutch, swap the splines, it'll bolt to any transmission. It's just super awesome. So I'm gonna end the video here. Sad day that the 370Z isn't going to be a daily. I was hoping to be able to drive it, but we'll get her fixed up, get some wheels, get rid of these wheels and this whole setup and do some new stuff to the bumpers and the body, get the fender, get the headlight, get a new radiator, get a new core support. We'll get this thing fixed up. But I'm gonna end the video here. If you like these videos, make sure to click the subscribe button, throw a thumbs up, throw a comment below. As always, see you guys next time.